Ever wonder why your mind feels so chaotic, even when life looks normal on the outside? It's not your phone. It's not your job. It's the absence of something deeper in a code. Discipline isn't just a habit. It's your identity, fighting back against a world designed to distract you. Discipline isn't just about waking up early, checking off boxes, or building routines. It's about who you are when the noise fades. It's about forging structure in a world that constantly pulls you toward chaos. And if your mind feels scattered, restless, or foggy, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been drifting without a compass, operating without order, without your own law. In that void, the mind doesn't collapse all at once. It quietly decays through missed mornings, vague intentions, and a slow, dull ache of regret that you carry like background noise. The Stoics understood this truth long before modern science gave it a name. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't chase a burst of motivation. They followed a coda law they chose for themselves, especially in the hard moments, when emotions raged or when life lost meaning. That inner code held them steady. Because here's the brutal truth. Without inner discipline, you become a slave to outer chaos. But when you reclaim your mind, when you choose structure over impulse, clarity over confusion, presence over distraction, you become dangerous in the most powerful way. This episode isn't about hacks. It's not a list of tips to boost your morning routine. It's about transformation. It's about rewiring how you think, act, and live. It's about making discipline sacred, not stiff or mechanical, but intentional and alive. Whether you're a creator, a student, a leader, or someone just trying to keep it together, these 12 Stoic laws will reshape the way you treat your time, your energy, and your inner world. Because these aren't just rules, they're reminders. Reminders that you don't need to wait to feel ready. You just need to move, especially when it's hard, especially when it's quiet, especially when no one's watching. Because real discipline doesn't perform. It doesn't beg for applause. It simply shows up again and again until one day you realize you didn't just build better habits. You built a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Law 1. Discipline is self-respect. Made visible, ask yourself, honestly, how do you treat yourself when no one's around? Not when the camera's on. Not when someone's expecting you to deliver. But in those silent, private moments, just you, your choices, and the weight of your future. Because that's where true discipline lives. Not in a planner or a checklist, but in the invisible crossroads you meet every single day, where you quietly choose between who you are and who you're becoming. At its core, discipline isn't punishment. It's not about restriction, robotic routines, or denying joy. It's about self-respect. It's choosing what strengthens you, not what soothes you in the short term. Not because you dislike yourself, but because for the first time you truly respect yourself. Enough to stop abandoning your own potential. That's what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Because if you don't rule your impulses, they'll end up ruling you. If you don't take control of your cravings, your fears, your procrastination, or your impulses, something louder will take over. And most of the time, it's whatever screams the loudest in the moment: a craving, a fleeting emotion, a social trend, and just like that, without even realizing, you start drifting away from your own potential until you barely recognize yourself. Most people think discipline is forces if you have to shame yourself into doing what matters. But real discipline feels different. It's not a war against yourself. It's a homecoming, a quiet return. It's standing up in your own life and saying, I'm done betraying myself. Let's bring this down to earth. It's 6 a.m., your alarm goes off. You're exhausted. You feel that heavy resistance. Every fiber in your body wants to hit snooze. But you made a promise not to the world, but to yourself. So you sit up, you stretch, you move. Not because it feels good, not because you're inspired, but because in that tiny moment, you're declaring, my goals matter more than my mood. That's discipline, and yes, it's beautiful. Or picture this. You've committed to taking care of your health. Now you're sitting at a dinner table where everyone's indulging, joking, nudging you to join in. You feel that pull to belong, to relax, to give in. But instead, you breathe. You remember why you started. You choose dash consciously. It seems small, but it's sacred. Because it's not about the calories. It's about reclaiming authorship over your life. Discipline also teaches others how to treat you. When you respect your time, people start respecting it too. When you hold boundaries, people feel them. When you keep your word to yourself, you walk differently. You speak with calm conviction. You don't move with arrogance. You move with quiet power. Because you know you're living in alignment. You're not perfect, but you're real. And in a world drowning in noise, that kind of authenticity is rare and powerful. But let's not sugarcoat it. Discipline will force you to face your shadows. It'll expose the lies you've told yourself that you had more time, that tomorrow would be better, that just this once doesn't count. It pushes you to stop romanticizing your potential and start working for it. That's why so many avoid it. Because it's easier to live inside the illusion of someday than in the discomfort of right now. And that's where Stoicism comes in. Not as a rigid rule book, but as a compass. A Stoic doesn't wait for motivation. They don't negotiate with their weaker impulses. They act deliberately, consistently, not because it looks impressive, but because it's right. Because they understand that every disciplined choice is a vote for the future self they're committed to becoming. So, if you're struggling with discipline, look for hacks. Look for honesty. Where are you abandoning yourself? Where are you trading your future for a few moments of ease? And more importantly, what would change if you started showing up for yourself with the same loyalty and effort you give to everyone else? Discipline isn't something you switch on and off. It's not a lifestyle trend. It's a way of living that says, I matter. My purpose matters. I refuse to waste this life. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just start with one promise kept, one decision made with intention, one morning reclaimed. That's how you begin to remember your strength, because the real flex isn't waking up at 5 a.m. It's keeping your word when no one's watching. It's building a self you can actually trust, and that kind of freedom, no one can give it to you, and no one can take it away. Coming up next, law to build discipline that matches your nature. You might see routines online that look inspiring. Cold showers, 5 a.m. alarms, color-coded calendars. But if those routines aren't rooted in your temperament, your strengths, and your personal rhythm, they won't stick. Worse, they might backfire. Instead of empowering you, they'll leave you resenting the very idea of structure. The Stoics understood this deeply. They weren't trying to force everyone into the same mold. They didn't believe discipline was one-size-fits-all. They believed in something far more personal-self-governance. Marcus Aurelius wasn't Seneca. Epictetus was born a slave his life. His challenges, his daily structure were nothing like those of an emperor. And yet, they all lived by a shared principle. Each person must find their own internal land. Live by it, not by imitating someone else's path, but by studying themselves deeply enough to create a discipline that fits like skin, not like a costume. Let's make it real. Imagine two people, a soldier and a poet. The soldier thrives on structurally wake-ups, physical training, precise routines, tight order. The poet, they may need slow mornings, long stretches of solitude, bursts of chaos, followed by stillness. Both need discipline, but not the same kind. The soldier's discipline is built on rules and ranks. The poet's might be built on sacred silence, creative rituals, and a strong defense against distraction. Same principle, different application. Now what about you? Have you ever paused to ask yourself, what kind of discipline actually brings me to life? Not the one that gets the most likes, not the one that's trending, but the one that energizes you, grounds you, challenges you without breaking your spirit. Some people need stillness in the morning, others need movement. Some thrive in deep, uninterrupted focus, others shine in short, intense sprints. What matters isn't the method. What matters is building a rhythm you respect and then protecting it like it's sacred. Because in many ways, it is. This is where honesty becomes essential. If you're constantly failing to stick to a system, maybe the problem isn't your willpower. Maybe it's the system itself. Maybe you've been trying to squeeze into someone else's routine because it looks superior. But discipline isn't about superiority. It's about sustainability. It's about creating a structure you can return to even when life is chaotic. A structure that reflects who you are today and gently guides you toward who you're trying to become. Let's look at a practical example. Let's say you've been trying to wake up at 5 a.m. every day because a book told you that's what successful people do. But every morning, you hit snooze. You start to feel like a failure. You label yourself lazy, undisciplined, weak. But pause. What if your natural energy hits at 10 p.m.? What if your biology, your focus, your creative flow all light up at night? In that case, real discipline wouldn't be waking up early. It would be honoring that truth. It would be building your routine around your flow, not against it. And that doesn't mean you're letting yourself off the hook. It means you're done fighting your nature and ready to work with it. The Stoics would call this living according to nature. Not just the nature of the universe, but your inner nature. That's when discipline transforms. It becomes less about forcing yourself into compliance and more about forming a life that aligns with who you truly are. You stop pushing. You start flowing. You stop relying on willpower. You start moving in rhythm. You go through your day with clarity and presence, not because anyone's watching, but because the structure you've built feels like home. That's the goal. Not performance, not perfection, but a structure that protects your focus, supports your peace, and honors your unique design. So today, ask yourself, am I building discipline that actually matches who I am? Or am I still borrowing someone else's system, hoping it'll fix me? And then ask, what would it look like to build my own code? A code that honors both your strengths and your blind spots. Because real discipline isn't about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about becoming the architect of your own mind. Coming up next, Law 3, without order, you pay in silence. But even after recognizing the damage of emotional chaos, There's still one enemy that often slips under the radar, the silent drain of disorder. It doesn't scream, it doesn't crash into your life all at once. It creeps in quiet, invisible, but constant. This mental noise, you can't quite name it. It's subtle, soft, but over time it builds. It wears you down not in a single blow, but moment by moment, habit by habit, until one day you wake up and wonder, why do I feel so heavy? The Stoics understood this. They knew disorder wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. When your mind is cluttered, your actions stumble. When your time is unstructured, your life becomes reactive. And when your days lose rhythm, your soul loses peace. This is the hidden cost of a disordered life. Not just lost productivity, but lost presence, lost clarity, lost connection to the person you were trying to become. Maybe you think it's harmless, just figuring things out as you go. But here's the truth. When you don't give your time direction, the world will do it for you. Distractions don't ask for permission. Notifications don't knock. And chaos doesn't need an invitation. It sneaks in when you haven't built a wall to keep it out. Worse, still you rarely notice it at first. Disorder doesn't punish you instantly. It doesn't slap you. It seeps you. Skip your journaling. You check your phone before you even breathe. You stop planning. You eat what's easiest. Say yes to what's convenient. Postpone what matters most. And the world, it doesn't fall apart, but you do. Quietly, invisibly. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And that waste most of it doesn't come from laziness. It comes from lack of clarity. When you don't have a structure, you don't lead your life. You react to it. You become a passenger, dragged by moods, impulses, and everyone else's agenda. That's not freedom. That's invisible slavery." Now, let's be clear. Order isn't about micromanaging your every second. It's not cold, rigid control. It's about boundaries, containers that protect what matters. A morning ritual is a container, a journaling habit, a phone curfew, a weekly review. These aren't constraints. They are acts of rescue. Acts of rebellion against the chaos that wants to claim your attention. Because when you reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy. And when you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your power to choose, to act with purpose, not just reaction. This is what Stoicism demands, not to control the world, but to control how we move within it. And it begins with inner order. Mental architecture that supports your growth instead of sabotaging it. So ask yourself, what have you been tolerating in your life that drains you quietly? What small, disordered corner of your world has become a daily weight? Is it the clutter in your room, the mental tab you left open, the hard conversation you've been avoiding, the project you keep postponing, or the goal you keep redefining? Because deep down, it scares you. Whatever it is, name it. Then decide. Not perfectly, just clearly, because the longer you live without order, the more you suffer in silence. Not from loud disasters, but from slow erosion. And that's the kind of suffering that never makes headlines, but steals years from your life. So create order in your thoughts, in your time, in your space, not to impress anyone, but to give your mind the structure it's been begging for. Because discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. Success was never about control. It was always about freedom. Freedom through intentional design. And that design, it begins with inner order. Order is the blueprint that puts your freedom into motion. But beware. Success can soften you. Stay sharp. Success is seductive. It whispers lies in your ear. It makes you think the hard part is over, that you've made it, that the work is done. And that's when the real danger creeps in. Not when you're struggling, but when you're comfortable. Because comfort breeds complacency, and complacency quietly kills momentum. One of the most dangerous lies the mind will feed you is this: you've earned a break. Not a proper rest, but a break from your discipline, from your principles, from the very code that shaped you. But breaks like that don't restore you, they dissolve you. The Stoics knew this trap well. They warned against it constantly, because to them, success was never the point. Inner strength was, and that kind of strength, it requires constant sharpening. Take Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, more power than almost anyone alive. Yet he wrote to himself daily, reminding his mind not to sink into laziness, ego, or indulgence. Why? Because he understood every reward carries a hidden risk, the risk of forgetting what got you there. Think about it. You grind, you sacrifice, you train your mind and body, you show up consistently. Then finally, a win, promotion, praise, results. And what happens next? Your urgency fades. You start sleeping in a little. You skip that morning run. You stop journaling. You give distractions a pass, thinking, I've earned this. But here's the brutal truth. What got you here won't keep you here if you stop the work once it begins to pay off. Your decline has already started. That doesn't mean you can't rest. Rest is essential. But there's a world of difference between intentional rest and unconscious surrender. One renews you, the other unravels you. And the key difference: awareness. A Stoic doesn't fear rest. They fear drifting slowly, silently into a softer version of themselves. The edges dull, the fire dims, and suddenly you're living off yesterday's effort, not today's intention. It shows up subtly. You stop investing in your relationships, assuming they'll maintain themselves. You lose hunger in your learning, thinking you already know enough. You neglect your health, convincing yourself you've earned the junk food. It doesn't feel dramatic, it just feels easy. But that ease is a slow, quiet decay disguised as reward. So how do you stay sharp? By remembering success is not a finish line, it's a checkpoint. And once you reach it, you ask yourself, what's next? What part of me needs refining now? Where have I started coasting? The Stoic path sees discipline not as a phase, but as a lifelong craft. It doesn't matter how far you've come. What matters is this: are you still showing up with the same hunger, clarity, and humility that got you here? Discipline after success looks different. It's no longer driven by desperation. It's powered by devotion to your values, your process, and your vision. You don't train because you're falling behind. You train because you're committed. Because ease is not the goal, excellence is. And excellence isn't about perfection. It's about sustained, intentional growth. So if you're in a season of success right now, don't relax your standards. Find them. Use the stability you've earned not to pause, but to evolve. And if you've drifted off, course a little. No shame. Just wake up, recommit, re-enter. Not because you're losing, but because you remember who you are. And if you ever forget, come back here. Discipline built you, and only discipline will sustain you. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't shout or beg for attention, it just shows up. Remember what we said earlier. If you wait for the noise to fade before taking action, you'll stay stuck forever. Because that inner voice, the one that whispers, let's start tomorrow, just one more hour, or you're not in the right headspace, isn't your logic speaking, it's your ego, it's comfort talking, and comfort will always speak louder than growth. The hard truth is this: motivation is fickle, but discipline is dependable. That's why the Stoic doesn't rely on feelings to decide their actions. They rely on principles. Epictetus didn't say, do the right thing when you feel like it. He said, first, decide who you want to be, then do what you must. That's not about emotion. That's about commitment. Picture a craftsman, a sculptor. They don't sit around wondering if they feel like working today. They show up, they pick up their tools, and somewhere in the process, not before it returns, momentum builds. Clarity arrives. That's how discipline works. Action first. Emotion follows. And yet, we've built a culture around waiting. Waiting for the right mood, the right energy, the right moment. But the truth is, life doesn't wait. Time doesn't pause. If you want a strong body, a focused mind, a clear identity, you can't afford to live at the mercy of your mood. You have to move, especially when you don't want to, because that's when it matters most. Let's get practical. Don't feel like working out? Put on your shoes. Step outside for 5 minutes. That's it. Don't want to write? Open the page. Type just one sentence. Avoiding a hard conversation or task. Set a 10-minute timer. Start anyway. The goal isn't perfection, it's initiation. Because once your body moves, your mind follows. And what once felt impossible suddenly feels inevitable. The Stoics knew the hardest part of any task is the beginning. The first breath, the first step, the first shift from hesitation to action. That's where your real power lives, not in some big dramatic act, but in tiny, consistent moves that ignore your mood and obey your mission. So ask yourself, what am I delaying just because I don't feel ready? And more importantly, what would happen if I stopped needing to feel ready at all? Because once you learn to move without motivation, you become something rare, someone who shows up anyway, someone who doesn't wait to feel powerful, because they know they already are. Earlier, we explored the importance of living by conscious choice rather than unconscious programming. Now let's take that a step deeper. Let's be honest, much of what we call discipline isn't truly discipline at all. It's conditioning, deeply ingrained behaviors shaped by the environments we grew up in. Maybe you were raised in a home where achievement was the only currency for love, so now you overwork and call it ambition. Maybe you were taught to play small, to not outshine anyone, so you sabotage your own success and call it being humble. Or perhaps you avoid confrontation, not because you're peaceful, but because fear taught you to stay quiet. These aren't choices. They're reflexes, automatic responses wired into your nervous system. And they're far from neutral. They shape your identity, your decisions, your entire life. To live as a Stoic means slowing down. It means asking the hard questions most people avoid. Why am I chasing this goal? Why do I speak this way, eat this way, think this way? Is it serving me or just familiar? When you start choosing your responses instead of reacting out of habit, everything changes. You stop living life on autopilot. You become the author of your day instead of its victim. Habits are no longer blind repetitions, they're built with awareness. You're no longer drifting, you're directing. This doesn't mean you throw away your past. It means you sort through it. Keep what's aligned. release what isn't, and rework what needs refinement. That's the essence of true discipline. Not just doing hard things, but doing the right hard things. The ones that move you toward the person you want to become in practice. This could be as simple as shifting your mornings from scrolling your phone to sitting in silence, catching yourself before you react in anger and choosing patience instead, letting go of a long-held belief that's stunting your growth. These may seem like small acts, but they're not. They're revolutions because they're no longer unconscious. They're chosen, so pause. Reflect. Where in your life are you still running on default instead of design? What part of your discipline is just fear wearing a mask? And what would it look like to act not out of habit, not out of pressure, but from a place of truth? Because the real power of discipline isn't just in what you do, it's in why you do it. And when your choices come from presence, not programming, that's not just order. That's freedom. Now let's go deeper. 7. What you do in private defines who you are in public. Character is not built in the spotlight. It's forged in silence. In the quiet hours, when no one is watching, no one is clapping, and no one is keeping score. That's where your integrity is born. It's the decisions you make when you're tired, the promises you keep when there's no pressure, the habits you maintain when no one's applauding. The Stoics knew this truth intimately. Who you are in private inevitably becomes who you are in public, not the other way around. But today's world is obsessed with performance. Social media rewards visibility, not integrity. We're celebrated for the highlight reel, not the quiet discipline that makes it possible. But public praise without private practice is fragile. Eventually, the mask cracks, the truth leaks through, and the world sees what you really built or didn't. That's why Marcus Aurelius, even as Emperor of Rome, wrote nightly reminders, not for the crowd, not for legacy, but for himself, for the man he wanted to remain, because he knew that real war is not out there. It's in here, and it's fought daily, in the shadows. Let's bring this home. Anyone can give a powerful speech, but do they listen with patience when they're interrupted at home? That's the test. Let's be honest. Anyone can post a powerful quote online, but do they truly live by it when their emotions spiral out of control? It's easy to seem disciplined when there's a coach watching, when a boss, a mentor, or some form of external accountability is checking in. But what about the moments when no one's around? No deadlines, no rewards, no judgment, just you and your own reflection in the mirror. That's where your true legacy is built. Not during your best days, but in your repeated, private choices. It's built on that morning you push yourself out of bed when everything in you wants to stay down. It's built in the evening you resist the easy escape, the binge, the scroll, the excuse. It's built during the hour you choose to sit with your discomfort, instead of numbing it away with temporary pleasure. These moments feel invisible, even insignificant, but they are not. They are the roots beneath the surface, and the deeper those roots grow, the stronger the tree becomes. There's also something deeper that happens, a psychological shift. When your private actions align with your values, something powerful begins to grow inside you. Trust. And self-trust is a superpower. Because once you've proven to yourself that you'll keep your word even when no one is watching, you begin to walk through the world differently. You don't explain yourself as much. You don't crave approval. You no longer feel the need to prove your strength to others, because you've already proven it to the one person that matters most, you. But the opposite is also true. if you constantly break your own promises behind closed doors, cut corners, lie to yourself, avoid the hard things you carry that with you, it shows, not loudly, but consistently. In your posture, your eyes, your tone, it chips away at your confidence. Quietly, because deep down, you know the truth. I can't trust myself. That's why Stoic discipline has nothing to do with impressing the world. It's about impressing upon your soul the weight of your daily choices. It's about honoring your solitude, treating your alone time as sacred, because that is your training ground. That's where your future is being shaped, in the moments when no one else is watching. So pause and ask yourself, who am I when the room is empty? When the camera's off, the lights are out, and the only witness is my own conscience. Because that version of you, unfiltered, unpraised, unseen, you is the one building your life. And the more aligned that version becomes, the less effort it takes to shine in public. Because you're not acting, you're not performing, you're simply being. Now, let's go deeper. Rule 8. Tame the dopamine, rewire the reward. If your mind constantly feels scattered, restless, or overstimulated, it's not because you're weak. It's not a moral failure. It's biology hijacked. We live in a world engineered to overload our brains with dopamine. Infinite scrolls, notifications, instant likes, quick shots of pleasure and validation. Every app is designed to keep you chasing, clicking, craving. And here's the scary part. We barely notice. Because this overstimulation has become the new normal. But here's what the Stoics would challenge you with. Does this habit serve your soul, or just your senses? Because not everything that feels good in the moment is good for your long-term strength. And if you want to build real discipline, it starts with this awareness. Not all rewards are created equal. Some are loud, shallow, and fleeting. Others are quiet, deep, and lasting. The real work begins when you start to rewire your brain, when you stop chasing cheap dopamine and start earning meaningful satisfaction. Let's break that down. Dopamine itself isn't your enemy. It's a natural part of your brain's learning system. It helps you remember what's worth repeating. The problem is, the modern world hijacks it with fast, artificial stimuli. Every ping, every clip, every swipe. It teaches your brain to expect pleasure without effort. So when it's time to focus, to study, to sit still, to work out, your brain rebels. It says, this is boring. Give me something faster. But that's not weakness. That's conditioning. So how do we fight back? The Stoics wouldn't tell you to eliminate pleasure. They'd tell you to elevate it, to replace shallow pleasure with deeper forms of reward. Instead of binging content, find joy in completion. Instead of chasing distraction, cultivate mastery. Instead of chasing likes, learn the quiet pride of keeping your word. The shift is hard, but it's where the real transformation begins. Structure is a form of mercy. Most people think of structure as something cold, rigid schedules, strict calendars, a prison of routines that suffocates spontaneity. But that's only true when structure is imposed without intention. Without soul, true structure, conscious, meaningful structure isn't punishment, it's protection. It's the act of building a strong boundary between yourself and chaos. Not because you're afraid of the world, but because you respect yourself enough to preserve your clarity. Because without structure, you don't get freedom, you get fragmentation, you get burnout. You get a day full of activity, but empty of meaning. Seneca warned us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And that waste, it happens when we live by accident instead of by design. When we answer every message, chase every impulse, and try to do everything at once, we end up doing nothing with true presence. We go to bed exhausted, but strangely unfulfilled, busy, yet lost. The Stoics weren't anti-pleasure. They didn't reject freedom. What they rejected was living without intention, because a day without structure is a day surrendered to randomness. And the cost of randomness, your peace, your progress, your power. Let's bring it down to earth. Imagine starting your morning with no plan. You reach for your phone, respond to the loudest notification, jump into someone else's crisis. Hours pass. You drift from one thing to the next, reacting, scrambling, losing track. You feel drained, disconnected, and in the end, the day owns you, not the other way around. That's not freedom. That's low-level suffering, dressed as flexibility. Now compare that to a structured morning. You wake up and leave your phone aside. You sit in silence. Maybe you write. Maybe you stretch. You know your first task. No overthinking, it's already decided. By noon, you've already finished what matters most. That's not rigidity, that's alignment. That's mercy for your mind, your energy, your focus. See, the mistake most people make is thinking structure means doing more. But real structure, it's doing less better. It's about removing the noise so the signal of your true self can rise. It's about building a space where your highest self can actually show up, not occasionally, but every single day. And in the end, structure isn't just about productivity. It's about emotional health. Because when your day has no rhythm, your mind has no peace. 10. Act like the person you're becoming. Every decision you make doesn't just shape your future. It silently carves into your identity. You're not simply building habits. You're rehearsing a new version of yourself, whether you realize it or not. Every action, no matter how small, is a quiet declaration. This is who I believe I am. And that's the heart of discipline. It's not just behavior, it's embodiment. It's when you become, rather than just try. A Stoic doesn't stop at doing what's right. They aim to become the kind of person who naturally chooses what's right without force, without internal conflict. That's a deeper transformation. And that's where real discipline begins. From within, ask yourself, who are you trying to become? Not in 5 years, not on paper, but in the smallest, most invisible details of today. In the actions you repeat. Are they reflecting the person you're trying to grow into, or pulling you back to who you used to be? If you want to become calm, strong, focused, disciplined, you have to live like it now. Not when you feel motivated, not when life gets easier, but now. That's identity-based discipline, acting as if your best self is already within you, just waiting for you to practice it into existence. Let's say you want to become a writer. Your old self waits for inspiration. Your disciplined self writes every morning, even when the words feel clumsy. You want to be healthy. Your old identity makes excuses. Your new one treats the gym like an unmissable appointment. You want to be calm. The old you reacts instantly. The new you breathes, then responds with intentional composure. Every moment is a choice. You're either reinforcing your old identity or rehearsing a new one. But here's the thing, this isn't pretending. This is practice. You don't fake confidence. You train it. You don't wait to feel strong. You choose to act strong. Eventually, what felt like pretending becomes reality. You're no longer Mimicking the person you admire, you're becoming them, piece by piece. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write about virtue. He lived with it. His journal was a mirror, not to recall the past, but to measure the man he was actively becoming. He understood identity is not fixed. It's sculpted by actions, by days, by decisions. And even if the change isn't visible, immediately you must keep going, because every action doesn't just produce results, it produces you. You don't meditate once and become peaceful. You don't run once and become strong. You don't read one page and become wise. But if you do it enough, something begins to shift. You stop acting like the old version of you. You start becoming the person you once only admired from afar. And truthfully, this journey won't feel comfortable. It demands that you let go of familiar excuses, outdated identities, and old emotional patterns. Maybe that's why many people resist change, because it forces them to answer a deeper question. Am I truly ready to become someone new? So, if the last page reminded you that discipline isn't a feeling, it's a signal to your future self, then this part is about what that signal is building. Every minute of your life is like a brick. Quiet, small, often unnoticed but powerful. And you get 1,440 of them each day. The real question isn't whether you have time, it's what are you building with it? Because time is always being spent, whether you realize it or not. Every hour shapes your habits. Every repeated action becomes a wall, a room, a foundation, until one day you're standing inside the temple of your own life. The only question is, will it stand strong or collapse? The Stoics were obsessed with time, not because they feared death, but because they respected it. Seneca once said, "People guard their property carefully, but when it comes to wasting time, they're reckless with the one thing that should be protected the most." Why? Because time can't be replaced. Once a minute is gone, it's gone. Every moment lost to distraction, indecision, or avoidance is like placing a cracked brick into your temple. And a structure built on weak bricks eventually breaks down. Think about someone you admire, not for their popularity, but for their discipline, their calm presence, their integrity. That person wasn't built by one life-changing event. They were sculpted slowly, minute by minute, through how they chose to respond to discomfort, how they structured their time, how they focused their mind and gave attention to the things that matter. Their life is not just a result, it's architecture. And so is yours. Spend 30 minutes scrolling every day, and by year's end you've lost 11 full days, not to rest, not to joy, but to mindless escape. Now flip that. Write for 30 minutes a day. You've written a book, read for 15. You've absorbed volumes, reflect for just 10. You begin to see your growth, your patterns, your power. It's not about how much time you have. It's about what you do with it. That's why the Stoics journaled, why they planned, why they reflected every single day. Because they understood, if you're not building, you're eroding. There is no neutral, so the only real question is this: are your minutes making your life stronger or weaker? This doesn't mean you need to be productive every second. That's not discipline, that's delusion. Rest matters. Joy matters. But when you rest, when you play, be present. Don't waste your time feeling guilty or numbing out. That's what drains you. Not activity, but fragmentation. So how do you live this out? You wake up. Instead of grabbing your phone, you take 10 minutes to breathe, reflect, and set your intention. That's a brick. You sit down to work. You choose focus over multitasking. Another brick. You say no to the excuse, yes to the workout, no to the distraction, yes to the thing you've been avoiding, brick by brick by brick. And by the end of the day, you don't feel burnt out. You feel grounded, because you didn't just spend the day you built with it. That's what it means to live on purpose, not scattered, not by accident, but aligned. So ask yourself right now, what am I building with my minutes? Is this hour shaping the person I want to become more, pulling me away from it? Because one way or another, the temple of your life is being built. The only question is, will it stand? If you're not measuring it, it's not growth. You might say you want to improve, but how do you know if you are? If you're not tracking your progress, you're just guessing. And if you're guessing, you're probably drifting. That's the hard truth. Most people avoid this because it's uncomfortable. But growth without reflection is just noise. Discipline without self-awareness is just exhaustion. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, before modern psychology caught up. Without self-examination, there's no evolution. You can't improve what you don't track. You can't master what you don't measure. Aristotle said it clearly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. But habits don't happen by accident. They are built with attention. And attention comes from measurement, not to punish yourself, but to clarify your path. This isn't about turning your life into a spreadsheet. It's about making your growth real. Because what gets tracked, gets respected. Think of it this way. You wouldn't build a house without checking your measurements. You wouldn't navigate a ship without checking your direction. But people try to build a meaningful life, values, focus, discipline without ever stopping to measure where they're actually going. And then they wonder why they feel lost, stuck, disconnected. It's not because they're lazy, it's because they're blind. They're working hard but in the wrong direction. Let's get practical. Do you know how often you break promises to yourself? How much time you lose to distractions? How often you follow through on your goals? Without measurement, these answers stay vague. And vagueness is the enemy of progress. But once you start tracking just a little, everything begins to shift. You become more honest, more aware, more intentional. You begin to see your patterns, your triggers, your excuses, the moments you tend to fall apart. And with that awareness comes something powerful, choice. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius reflected each night. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What can I do better tomorrow? That's not just journaling, that's accountability. And done consistently, it becomes your compass. You stop repeating mistakes unconsciously. You start adjusting. That's how excellence is built. Not through grand declarations, but quiet daily calibration. For you, maybe this means a simple habit tracker. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling before bed. Maybe a weekly review of your goals. It doesn't need to be perfect, just consistent. Because when you measure your effort, Evan, in silence, something profound happens. You begin to respect it. You begin to see that discipline isn't a burden, it's a blueprint, built brick by brick, pattern by pattern, choice by choice. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still guessing? What would change if you started tracking? Not to be perfect, but to be present. Because without measurement, discipline becomes a blur. But with it, to gain clarity, direction, power. That's how you stop spinning in circles and start becoming who you were meant to be. Discipline isn't about chains. It's about choice. It's not cold or harsh or lifeless. True Stoic discipline isn't punishment, it's alignment. It's crafting a life that mirrors your deepest values. It's shaping chaos into order, quietly, relentlessly, day after day. Without order, the mind crumbles. Without structure, your energy scatters. Without reflection, your potential rots in silence. But with discipline, real, intentional, self-respecting discipline, everything changes. You walk taller, you think clearer, you act not from pressure, but from purpose. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to rebuild your life in one dramatic gesture. You just need to return to what matters, again and again. Lay the brick, do the work, hold the standard. And when you fall, rise with clarity, because each act of discipline is a message. I am becoming who I was born to be. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop performing for others. Start aligning with yourself. 12 laws, 1 mission. Not to control life, but to master how you move through it. And if this spoke to something deep in you, share it with someone who's ready to take back their mind. If you're walking this path quietly, with no applause and no shortcuts, you're not alone. Keep building, keep sharpening, and keep showing up like it matters, because it does.